Several lawmakers are calling on their congressional colleagues to reconvene and extend the federal eviction moratorium. A group of progressive lawmakers slept outside the U.S. Capitol building Friday night in protest. They're angry that the House of Representatives broke for summer recess, leaving millions of Americans at risk of losing their homes. Some Democrats are blaming Republicans and even members of their own party for letting the deadline pass without taking action. On Thursday, President Biden urged Congress to find a solution, saying that the Supreme Court blocked the administration and the CDC from acting on its own. For more on this, I'd like to bring in Washington Post economics correspondent Heather Long. Heather, welcome. Thanks for being here. So do we know how many Americans are behind on rent and how many may be evicted now that the moratorium is expired?
This is a significant issue. There are more than 6 million people in the United States who are severely behind on rent, in some cases $10,000 or more dollars behind on rent. Maybe they haven't been paying for 6 months to a year. And starting in August, so the moratorium does expire today, those court cases will begin to work through the system. Already, according to the eviction lab at Princeton University, there are 350,000 cases that have been filed and were on hold. So all that paperwork is already in. Those cases will begin to move through the court system quite rapidly in August. And obviously, more landlords will be able to file paperwork for those other millions of renters quite soon.
Well, Congress approved $46 billion in aid for both renters and landlords, but your colleagues at the Post report that just $1.5 billion was actually spent by the end of May. Why is that?
This is the biggest tragedy of all of this, is there is money to help both landlords and these renters, but it's not getting to the people who need it most. The big holdup here has been the same holdup we saw with trying to get the unemployment aid out initially last year during the pandemic. We've got antiquated computer systems, and this money had to be distributed from the federal government to states and localities. So a lot of counties and cities had to set up their own programs. They didn't have programs in place, or they certainly weren't this large. Places like Los Angeles had so many applications that their system basically crashed and they had to stop accepting applications. Same thing in Phoenix, just saw an overwhelming number of applications and they stopped accepting online applications and transitioned to paper. Other places, about half the counties in the country haven't spent any money at all. They just haven't been able to get their systems up and running. And so even though this money is there, as you said, less than 5% of it has been spent 6 months into this money being available.
So it's not only the tenants who have been affected by the fact that this money hasn't been dispersed. I'm wondering if you can also tell us how the eviction moratorium has impacted landlords and also the inability to get those funds to disperse and how it's affected them as well.
Obviously, people like to get paid. And if you're a landlord, this moratorium has been in place for over a year, for 11 months now. And in some cases, there are some really sad stories where some of these landlords have not received money for months. And it's a lot of landlords in the United States are people who own maybe 2 to 10 properties. These are not big real estate barons. These are people, middle-class people who are trying to earn some extra money through real estate investing. And if they haven't been paid, then they're obviously having trouble paying their own bills. There's been some horror stories of landlords who are now foreclosing on their own mortgages. They can't pay for their house now because their money isn't coming in. Another thing we've been seeing that I've been writing about is for bigger apartment buildings that have been facing these issues, they're now raising the rents and raising them significantly. And places like Phoenix have seen more than over 10% rent increases in the past few weeks, mainly because a lot of buildings are trying to recoup the money they didn't get in the past year on the current tenants now.
Heather, on another economic topic, you report that states that cut additional unemployment benefits early, that they're actually not seeing a hiring boom, but there is a little change in who is getting hired. What changes seem to be happening, and what more can you tell us about those states?
Yeah, this is obviously a huge debate. How generous should these unemployment benefits be, and should they remain in place while there's so many job openings in the country, almost 10 million job openings that have not been filled? So the early evidence from the 20 states, these are all Republican-led states that did cut back those benefits in June, so cut back from about $600 a week down to $300 a week, and the aid went away for self-employed and gig workers entirely. What we're seeing in those 20 states, there has not been a huge hiring boom, at least not in the first few weeks. But what's interesting is who gets hired changed. So in those states like a Missouri or an Iowa that were quick to pull back on that aid, we have seen more people in the 25 to sort of 55 range come back into the workforce. Whereas I know you all have reported there has been across the nation this huge teenage hiring boom. But what we're seeing in once states take away unemployment money, a lot of businesses stop hiring teenagers and start hiring more experienced workers in their 30s and 40s. So there is a little bit of a change there. But again, it's not like there's some huge surge. This is not the silver bullet to the hiring problems to just take away the unemployment aid.
Very interesting to see the results of that very public debate. All right. Heather Long, thank you.
Thank you.